Hey there, friends. Glad to have you joining me for episode 2 of the Streamlined Motherhood podcast. If you missed the first episode, head over there to hear what this podcast is all about and some backstory. In this episode, I'll be tackling how to game plan for motherhood. Wait, what? Yes, I promise this is an actual thing, and I'm going to help you develop your philosophy and approach so that parenting feels a bit more easy breezy instead of lose your mind crazy. Sound good? Perfect. Then on with the show. This is the Streamlined Motherhood podcast. I'm Kate, fellow mom of 3 and host of this show. I'm here to guide you back to your intuition, help you dig out from the chaos, and start to feel confident in the mama you are. Each episode, I'll share tips and encouragement for thriving on your motherhood journey, because this life you're living is way too important to leave on autopilot. Have you been to the Streamlined Life yet and downloaded your copy of 9 wellness tips for the busy mama? This is my free guide to you on the checkpoints to look for every day to make sure that you're feeling your best, full of energy, and kicking butt at motherhood. I also recorded a video webinar just for you in which I go over each of my tips in more detail. Just head to www.thestreamlinedlife.com, enter your email address, and it's all yours. So when I first became a mom 7.5 years ago, so this was 2011, I had no clue what I was doing. If you listened to my first episode, you probably caught on to how totally unequipped I was to not only care for a baby, but also raise said baby to adulthood. Do you ever wonder why we need a license to drive a car? And in many professional fields, you can't even legally practice until you pass a test? Well, with motherhood, we have all the tools we need inside ourselves. And no test is needed because, let's be honest, every single day is the test. And we are totally rocking this gig. You hear me? We don't need permission from someone else to be a parent. But gosh, it sure would be nice to have some support or maybe even a clue as to what the heck we're doing. Maybe you came to motherhood fully prepared with a perfect plan of how you envisioned it going. If you really think about it, is it going how you hoped? And if it isn't, what needs to change? If you haven't had any kids yet, but are preparing to, how do you see yourself as a mother? Because you are in the perfect spot to start thinking and planning for your motherhood journey. Stick with me and I'll help you with your roadmap. And if you're a seasoned mama but need a new direction, I think you're going to also love this episode. But before we really dig into creating our own motherhood philosophy, let me ask you a question. In an ideal world, what sort of mother would you be? Would you be the outdoorsy type that believes there's no bad weather and carries field guides in her back pocket? Or maybe you hope to be the type of mother that led a peaceful and inspiring circle time every morning with her little ones as you played the piano. Maybe, if you're like me, you didn't really know what type of mother you wanted to be, but you definitely knew that you wanted to be there for your kids. And maybe also be the type of mom who bakes chocolate chip cookies in the afternoon for the kids to enjoy after school. There is no wrong way to visualize your motherhood and no perfect form of it. Let me repeat. There is no wrong way to do motherhood. Unless, of course, you're causing physical or mental harm to your children. And if you're really struggling in that latter way, there's no shame. But please head to my show notes for some resources to get help right away. Okay, so back to the vision setting. Are you writing this down? Wait, are you telling me your hands are full and you can't? You know, I am just kidding. I'm just grateful you're listening right now. And I'm going to put all of these questions in the show notes as a mini guide to the episodes so that you can peek in on that after the kiddos are in bed. Sound good? So whatever vision of motherhood popped into your mind, let's go with it. Typically, our gut response is the correct one if you can catch it before outside influences change it up. Earlier this spring, I was really struggling, both health-wise and emotionally. I'm sure I'll share with you in an upcoming episode what was going on and how I was able to dig out of some mild depression and adrenal fatigue. I was feeling so run down. We had just gotten on the road to travel full time, and honestly, I felt pretty confused about how I was mothering and educating my kids. I really just wanted to stay in bed all day and throw in the towel. Except there really isn't any quitting motherhood, is there? And just for reference, I do stay home with my kids during the day, and I homeschool my 2 older girls, but I also work a full-time job as an online humanities teacher for a university. It was part of my mothering philosophy early on to be home with my kids, while also keeping my career ticking along. So I had this one night in early April where I was just crying to my husband, Kirk, about how bad I felt about myself as a mother and an educator to our kids. Like total mom guilt, you know what I mean? And I had this thought that maybe I was such a letdown to them that it would be better for me to go back to work full time and quit pretending I was any good at this stay-at-home mom gig. Whew, it was heavy. And he said to me, in all seriousness, what is it you truly want out of yourself and motherhood? It's a good question, isn't it? My immediate response was that I desired to be present with my kids during the day, not distracted by work or my phone, and to see homeschooling as a joyous opportunity and not a drag. And I also knew I had to pull myself out of my funk so I could quit operating on autopilot and just be more intentional as a mother. I knew I could love being a mother, but I had lost sight of how. You see, it took reaching a really low to see my own potential as a mother and also to clearly hear my own voice in all of it. I suddenly had a plan to move forward, and it has helped me to get back on track. Have you ever felt that way? Wondered if you were enough for your kids? Listen, friend, you most certainly are, and I say that as a fellow imperfect mom. Our children need to see us as imperfect humans who make mistakes, but that also pick themselves back up and try again. The lesson here is not in imperfection, but the gumption to get back up again and try harder. So after that night, I knew I had a general idea of the mother I hoped to be, and that I also needed to be. I want you to think about your ideal version of yourself as a parent. What is it about your ideal version of yourself that is so attractive to you? As you're reflecting on that, I want to touch on something else. We live in a time period unlike any other in that we can see how not only our friends parent, but also complete strangers. Think about that. You're influenced by a much wider spectrum of people than your neighbor next door or the other moms in the school pickup line. This is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because the internet and social media in particular gives us a chance to see new methods and ways of doing life as a family. We can feel inspired, and that inspiration can lead to positive change. I know we would not have started traveling full time if we weren't inspired by all of the other families I saw on Instagram are already living this lifestyle. That is a positive form of internet inspiration. The downside of all this connectivity is that it can also make us feel lesser than or ashamed if we aren't parenting the way others are. It can make us feel like who we are is not enough for our kids or our partners. But deep down, I hope that you know that you are enough, because you most certainly are. So I want you to take that idealized version of yourself and scan it for outside influences. Perhaps there are parts of your vision that aren't actually you. Do you feel like you should be something you're not simply because you see other moms doing it? There are no right or wrong answers here. Just maybe think this over for the next few days. The other major influence on our mothering philosophy is how we ourselves were raised. Oh my goodness, this can be such a huge can of worms to unpack. My hope is that you were raised in a stable and loving home. But if you weren't, know that you're not alone. Maybe you had amazing and supportive parents, or maybe you felt shamed and mistreated much of your childhood. So much of what we experience as children we internalize and sometimes unknowingly replay with our own kids. If you've experienced anything traumatic in childhood, I highly recommend counseling as the right person can help you process the past and move positively forward. We want to separate the way we were parented from our own philosophy so that we aren't mothering on autopilot. Does that make sense? So even if you did have amazing parents and the perfect childhood, think about what it was about your parents that made it that way. Do you want to use those methods with your own children? And if not, how will you parent in a way that feels good to you? In future episodes, I will be sharing some strategies for parenting in a respectful and peaceful way, so stay tuned for that. At this point, you're ready to create a motherhood mission statement. This should be 1 to 2 sentences that summarize your ideal version of yourself, the tools and tactics you're comfortable using, and the parenting methods that do not belong in your home. Sometimes we need to write out all the ways we will not parent so we can see the ways in which we will. This is a way to stop parenting on autopilot, get a closer look at your parenting approach, and then make a positive plan for moving forward. So, my motherhood mission statement might read something like, I commit to being fully present with my children, to be grateful for my time and experiences with them, and to parent them peacefully and with respect for their growing selves. I will not use shame, guilt, or physical punishments as a parent, and I will give myself grace to become the mother I desire. Your statement might sound totally different, and that's totally okay because we all have different values and ideas of what kind of parent we want to be. You know in your heart the type of parent you're meant to be, so don't be afraid to write what you're feeling. Our words have so much power, and the act of writing it down and reading it regularly will give you the strength and courage to parent in your own unique way, outside the influences of others and your parents. Does it feel good to have that done? Are you feeling totally awesome about yourself and the amazing mother you are? Because you totally are. You have everything you need inside of you to be the one you are meant to be as a parent and as an individual. If this exercise of writing down a motherhood mission statement is getting you excited for a fresh start and an intentional approach, will you do me a favor? Send me an email, and if you feel comfortable, I would love to hear your motherhood mission statement. You can email me at thestreamlinedlife@gmail.com, and I promise to respond to every email. It may just take me a little while, but I promise I'll get to it. I cannot wait to hear from you guys. And one final note. Remember how we talked at the beginning of this episode about how we're all imperfect people? That still is true. So please give yourself grace and cut yourself some slack as you try to navigate life under your new mission statement. Don't beat yourself up if you parent in a way that doesn't feel good. I am guilty myself of having a bad day and yelling at my kids. Or for skipping homeschool because I'm feeling too dang tired to sit patiently while my daughter practices her reading. Instead of feeling guilty for that, I just recommit to my mission statement the next day and give myself the gift of a fresh start. Pretty much every single time I need it, which is often. And let's be honest here, there are 0 perfect moms, and no one should be held to that standard, and that includes you. Okay, friends, this was a pretty meaty episode. I hope that encourages you and gives you some tools to move forward in your motherhood journey. If you have a gal pal who could use some encouragement, or heck, even dads need mission statements too, please share this with anyone you know who could use some support. I love hearing your stories and connecting with you personally, so find me on Instagram at thestreamlinedlife and at my internet home, thestreamlinedlife.com. Finally, would you be so kind as to leave a review for this podcast on iTunes? I would really appreciate it, as it's my goal with all of this work to reach other mothers and encourage them on their journey. Your positive feedback lets others know to give it a listen, and that would just mean the world to me. Thanks so much for listening to episode 2 of the Streamlined Motherhood podcast, and I will see you next time.